Hey everybody, it's Adam, live and in person for you. Hey everybody, it's Adam, wonder who he'll interview. Call me Adam.com.
Hey everyone, it's Adam, and today I am so excited to be, as my theme song states, live and in person with you, catching up with one of my entertainment idols, Steve Burns, who you know as the original sleuth-solving host from Nickelodeon's mega hit show Blue's Clues, and the songwriter behind the theme song to CBS's hit series Young Sheldon. I first interviewed Steve in 2017 when he released his children's album For Everywhere. Now, after decades of ruthless internet gossip stating Steve Burns has died multiple times, Steve is getting ready to make his solo theatrical debut for adults with Steve Burns Alive, where he will not only dispel these awful rumors yet again, but take a deeper look into the difference between who people think you are and who you actually are. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Rothenberg, and for the past 16 years, I have been going behind the scenes with celebrities from the world of film, television, theater, and music. With over 2,200 interviews under my belt, I make my guests feel comfortable and at ease, allowing them to talk about life behind the curtain. So without further ado, please welcome Steve Burns. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited to be talking to you. And I just need to start off right away by saying that I'm very glad you are alive and here to speak with me again.
Yeah, me too. Me too, Adam.
So, if we could just go back to the beginning very quickly, in case there is somebody out there who may not know your story. You hosted Nickelodeon's Blue's Clues from 1996 to 2002. Why did you originally want to audition for the show?
Well, I didn't want to audition for the show is the real story. I was fresh off the bus from New York City, and I really wanted to be, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, kind of dangerous little short guy actor from the 70s. That's what I was patterning my self-concept after. And kids TV never entered my mind even once. Wasn't that I had anything against children's television. I didn't even know any kids when I auditioned for that show, and it certainly didn't seem like this is something I'd be any good at, really. I mean, I had long hair and earrings. I think I auditioned for that show in like a Fugazi t-shirt. I had a pack of cigarettes in my pocket. I thought it was to be the voice of a cartoon. I thought it was a voiceover audition. And the truth is, if I had known it was to be on a show, I don't know that I would have gone.
Wow.
When I got there, there was a camera in the room, and I thought, well, I guess I better do something. And I was right out of theater school, so I did all of this really pretty ham-fisted. I just was swinging for the fences in terms of making an acting choice. And so I liked that it spoke directly to the camera. I thought that was really interesting. So I made a huge meal out of that. I really got in there and got too close to the camera and really made it this kind of conspiratorial relationship. And the creators of the show actually liked it. And it turns out that really, really kind of worked in its way, but it was accidental all the way around. Really was.
Gosh. And you were on the show for 4 seasons, and then after 4 seasons, you decided it was time to leave the show. And prior to your departure, that is when some of the rumors started that you had died, and
Yeah.
you were also beginning to struggle with depression. And I mean, the world saw you as this happy-go-lucky host, but secretly you were battling the depression, the start of it.
Yeah, that's true. All of that is true. I didn't know what was going on, though.
Huh.
Is It's important to make that distinction. I wasn't aware. Oh, I'm depressed today. I mean, I was very young. I was in my 20s, mid 20s, and I had no idea what was going on with me. I just knew that my job was really hard, harder than it needed to be, is how I felt. And in terms of the clinical depression, it's not what you would think it is all the time. It's for me, it didn't always manifest in sadness
Mm-hmm.
or a sense of melancholy or despair. Or for me, it was a lot of frustration and a lot of what we would call now imposter syndrome.
Uh-huh.
But I just felt really out of place. I felt unqualified to be on that show. And the more successful it got, the more convinced I was that I was the wrong guy and that they really should have had a teacher or a child development specialist or something in that role. But I knew at the same time that I had a super good thing going on. And so I just kind of was like, fight it. You fight it. You fight these feelings. But that's a poor strategy. After, as you say, 4 seasons, but it was actually over more years than 4 years
Right, right.
of kind of digging in that well to find something authentic and joyful and curious um and I had really no strategy for replenishing any of that.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of I was just kind of a little bit internally beat up, I guess, by the time I left that show. And it's a shame because I didn't need to be so much. You know
Right.
what I mean? I just didn't know what I was dealing with at the time.
Right. And I also read that it took you, I mean, you struggled with it for like a decade where you stayed at home and you really just kept to yourself. And I read that on recently on Rainn Wilson's podcast, you told her that you eventually sought help for your depression by taking a page from your Blue's Clues character Steve and asked, "Will you help me?" So, for like the person out there who's also struggling, what do you feel was the moment that made you finally seek help? And how did you come to the realization of using your character's line of "Will you help me" as the catalyst?
I would like to be able to say that there was that kind of strategy there that I thought,
Uh-huh.
oh, I'll do what Steve did. But the truth is, I just let everything go far enough that when my life got legitimately serious, my father had cancer, and I was dealing with a particularly bad relationship, and there was just a lot
Mhm.
going on at the same time. It became heavier than I could lift,
Mhm.
So I waited. I think a lot of people do. I waited until it felt like crisis to
Mm.
to really confront what was going on, and I needed help,
Yeah.
and I did for years and years and years and years and years. But the problem is, I was just barely getting by. I was barely swimming by, and
Mhm.
I was able to convince myself that it was tenable, that it was manageable, and that I was just fine.
Mhm.
And that maybe if I build a house or have a relationship or do any of these things, then it would be all right.
Mhm.
For me, it had to get to, you know, a pretty bad point
Yeah.
before I did that. But it was later that I realized, oh, I'm doing the thing that I did on TV every day.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
So,
so that is the lesson, right? That's the big lesson that Steve taught me that I would always point to for
yeah.
others.
That's great that you were able to see the lesson and learn it and now help others with it.
Mhm.
So now all these decades later from when you hosted Blue Clues to now, you have decided that after decades of fabricated lies and that you died multiple times, you're getting ready to present your debut solo show, Steve Burns Alive, for 3 performances only. So what made 2025 the right time to premiere this show?
I have a dear friend of mine, my oldest friend, actually, somebody I've known since I was 14 years old, is a brilliant playwright. His name's Matt Freeman. He wrote The Ask, which did really, really well last year. And he's had kind of a front row seat to everything that I've been through, really my entire adult life. And he really encouraged me to write some of this stuff down. And I did, and showed him my pages, and he thought, there's something here. Why don't we at least try?
Mhm.
Why don't we at least try to organize this into a one-man show? And we did very quickly. In the course of about a week, we kind of cobbled something together.
Oh my God.
And we threw it up in Beacon, New York, and the response was pretty good. And so we figured we might try it again in New York City. We're still working on this thing,
Uh-huh.
and just see if there's anything there.
That's incredible that it only took about a week to write.
And 27 years to live.
Right. So, when would you say that you first came up with the idea for the show? Because even though you wrote it in a week, like you said, it took 27 years of living, but when did you actually think of this idea with him?
About a year ago, I think. I think that's right. We had some pages, and I thought, oh, what if the chair is on stage, and what if this is on stage? And it wasn't until I got the idea. I don't want to ruin the show, but it wasn't until I had this idea of presence and what that means when you're with someone live and when you're present this way,
Mm-hmm.
telepresent.
Mm.
Uh, the one thing in this world that I have 10,000 hours at is sort of creating a sense of immediacy through this super mediated environment, of a camera and a lens and outer space and satellites and electricity. And there were two versions of me in the world, both named Steve. One was a three-dimensional dude who lived in Brooklyn and was dealing with severe clinical depression. And one was this sort of indelible digital version of me that existed to create this presence
Mhm.
online. And the world decided that one of them was dead, you
Mm.
know, and it made me really question, like, how much of this is real?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and do they know something I don't know?
Mhm.
Which one of us did die? Is something dead that I don't know about? Is that real? Is the rumor fake? Is the rumor real? Is this Steve the real Steve? And it just created this identity tension that it was interesting to explore, especially in a live theatrical setting, right?
Yes, yes.
Because you think that theater is real. It's happening in the moment,
Mhm.
live,
Mhm.
between human beings who are sharing space. But I mean, I wrote this stuff with a guy I went to junior high with. You know, I said it in Beacon, and no matter what night you see it on, I'll have said it on a different night too. You
Mhm.
know, so it creates an interesting question
Mm.
of, is it the presence that's real, or is it the degree to which we connect to it that's real?
Mm.
Um, and that's sort of the spine of the show, really.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I thought, oh, there might be something here. That's something I can hang
Mm.
these stories on that feels authentic to me.
Yes. And how would you say writing the show, what did you learn about yourself in putting the show together that you didn't know living through it?
It's uncomfortable. A lot of the show is somewhat confessional and very vulnerable. Many of the stories that I'm getting ready to tell a bunch of strangers are stories that I had never told my friends or family. And I definitely have been questioning, why am I doing this? Why have I done this? But I think that I have always been, my whole life, I've been a very solitary dude.
Mhm.
Um, Even when I was a little kid, I've always been an aloney sandwich. And that said, I've learned, to answer your question, that people might really be social,
Mhm.
and that we might really find meaning in life through connection
Mm.
and through presence and through authentic presence that shares. And sharing these stories as dysfunctionally as I'm doing it through this weird show might be necessary,
Mhm.
on some level, if that makes sense. Just on a human level, it might be necessary to be seen for real.
Mhm.
That's really what it is.
And well, that actually leads into my next question, which is how do you hope this show helps others?
I hope that it foregrounds the struggle that we all have. I believe that the struggle isn't optional and that it's ours to share on
Mhm.
this earth. And that it is actually, from a certain perspective, part of what makes life so weird and beautiful. Um, but you can't let it get away from you,
Yeah.
you know, and you have to tend the garden. And when it gets too heavy to lift, ask for help.
Hmm. That's very important. And I hope people hear that too, how important it is to ask for help when you need it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of conversation about mental health now, and that's awesome.
Hmm.
That is great. And there's even a lot of people pointing to help. But I go to pains in the show to clarify that it's not just about I'm struggling, someone come save me. It's not that at all, actually. It's it's when you make the turn from seeking to console your feelings to seeking to confront them.
Mm,
And asking for help is a confrontational act that requires courage.
yes.
So that's what it really is.
Yeah.
Because you're going to help yourself ultimately is what it is. But
Right.
you need guidance. You need all sorts of things in order to
Yes.
do that.
How do you feel writing this show has helped you heal from the struggles you've been going through?
Well, I don't know. Like the real healing in life, I've noticed 5 years later, always. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever done any real healing. I'm sure you have. Um, but it's hard to know in the moment that it's happening. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
So I'm right now, I'm doing all these projects, and so I'm just completely neurotic about all of them at all times. So if I'm healing, I won't feel it until it's over.
And the press notes also state that people that the show, like I said in the intro, takes a deeper look into the difference between who people think you are and who you actually are,
Mm.
without giving away too much of what's in the show itself. Who are you actually that you feel people don't know? Or maybe I could phrase it as, what is something about yourself you want us to know about you that we don't?
I always say when you're on kids' TV, people want to separate you into two archetypes, basically. They either want you to be Mr. Rogers or they want you to be like a villain who is just like this nasty miscreant who's doing all these misdeeds secretly. And no one is really either.
Mhm.
And I am neither. I'm actually just someone exactly like you. I'm not an implausible saint sitting on a hill who has wisdom to give people, and I'm not a drug-addled mess who is secretly evil. I'm just a guy somewhere in the middle trying to do his best. I often feel in life that because of these expectations we bring to especially kids TV, I think kids TV is a little particular in this way that I often feel like I would disappoint people if they knew that I was just normal.
Mhm. Mm.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
So, humanizing, I think, is is a goal here, I suppose.
And as an adult, have you met a lot of your fans that used to watch you on Blue's Clues?
I feel like I have. I've signed up for a bazillion like fan conventions last
Uh-huh.
year, and that was intense. And I feel like I met a bazillion Blues Clues fans. So yeah, I feel like I've met an awful lot of them.
And in those encounters, going along with the theme of the new show, Steve Burns Alive, did anyone make you like? What do you feel like people think? Who do you wait? I have to get this wording correctly. I didn't actually write this very well. So, who,
Those are the best questions, though, Adam. The ones that
yeah,
you didn't write down.
yeah.
Always.
So so in those encounters of meeting the fans at the conventions, did anyone give you an indication of who they feel you are?
They always say, "Oh, thank you for being so wholesome, and thank you for being such a kind spirit." And I always tell them, I'm like, I'm no more wholesome than you are.
Hmm.
You know, I'm a pretty nice guy, and I try to be, and I'm concerned with that, but I don't think I'm especially wholesome or pure or kind. I'd like to be, but yeah, I'm not remarkable in that way.
After you sort of told them that, was there any kind of response or anything that they then followed up with?
I've met thousands of people, so it's different,
Mhm.
for each person,
Yeah.
but generally they're appreciative, I think, just to know that, oh yeah, Steve's just sitting next to me on the struggle bus,
Hmm.
we're the same.
Yeah. That makes a big difference, I would say. And I like how you talk about the humanizing of who you are because like you said, we are all similar in that we all have struggles. We have our good sides, we have our bad sides. It's probably like one of my favorite things about Dolly Parton's Halos and Horns album is she always described it as she's just a little too good to be really bad and just a little too bad to be really good. There's that medium there.
Oh hell yeah. I didn't know. That's perfect. Man, she's the gift that keeps on giving, huh? She's
She
wonderful.
is. Yes. Yes, she
Um,
is.
yeah, that's right, Dolly.
Now,
Amen.
I do want to just deviate from the show for a little bit, because I do want to know you also wrote the theme song for Young Sheldon. So how did that come to be?
Well, I was writing music, since high school. It's always been a thing that I did. And while I was on Blues Clues, I got a computer and I got Pro Tools, and I was just really experimenting um, with music. And it was
Mm.
actually a way that I was working through all of that depression. Honestly, that was the primary way I was working through all of that depression. And I had a bunch of songs written, and I had a favorite band, the Flaming Lips, and I found their producer and sent him a demo, and he actually liked it and asked if I wanted to record. So I went up there and actually recorded these songs and released an album that got decent reviews, but literally nobody bought it, except one of the showrunners of The Big Bang Theory, who loved the record. And when he created Young Sheldon, his son did a cut of the intro with my song on it and said, "Dad, use this." And he did. And when he emailed me and said, "We'd like to use your song for the spin-off of The Big Bang," I ignored the email because I thought it wasn't real.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, that's not real. That doesn't happen to someone. That's a fake email. And they were like, "Dude, you should really get back to us." And now we're all good buddies, and those people are just so kind. That's almost a story I don't like to talk about because I feel so undeserving of the good fortune that really is. I mean, there's two chords in that song, and I wrote it in my underwear in Brooklyn in 1999. So the idea that was on such a successful TV show is another thing that just I feel unqualified for, to be
Mm.
honest. But
But there's a great lesson within that story is that here you released this album and you said, not a lot of people bought it, but that didn't matter because the one person that did buy it, that it did mean something to, you got another job at. So it to me it just shows you never know what you put out there, how it's going to affect somebody, and it affected them in such a great way that it then led to this other amazing job for you.
yeah, it really is. I think being a creative person, I'm sure, I mean, this is changing every single day now, every hour now. But at least when I was coming up, it really was a batting average sort of thing.
Mm.
You're just constantly flailing. You're constantly swinging for the fences, constantly leaving it all on the table with whatever thing it is you're doing. And if you pour it all out 1,000 times, maybe two of those things will stick and hit and mean something to someone. And maybe one of those out of 1,000, maybe if you're lucky, will um, give back to you in some way.
Mhm.
So I think that's just kind of being a creative is you always have to generate and it has to be real. You gotta dig in there and get your guts out every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of my guts on that album. So good or bad, you know. So
Yes, yes. And it also led to your collaboration with and I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, Stephen Drozd from the
perfect.
Flaming Lips. And because that's who you when I should have mentioned this in the intro when I mentioned your album for Everywhere, you guys collaborated that album together. You released it together. So it also fostered this working relationship. It can help continue it in
Yeah,
writing
man.
that
I mean,
song.
he and I, he worked on my record, my theme song and all
Hmm.
of that music. He was extremely involved in that.
Yeah.
And we became pretty good friends for sure. Like, and
Yeah.
he's someone I deeply care about to this day. And Nickelodeon asked me to write a song for Groundhogs Day. And I was in Oklahoma where he lives. I was like, you want to do this with me? And we sat down and in 5 minutes wrote what I think is the finest song ever written about a groundhog together. And we had so much fun doing it that in that moment we said we must do a kids record because it would be too much fun. And we ended up pouring our guts out on a kids record to the point where we were two grown men weeping in a studio, about this really not for kids record that we ended up making that really moved us. But kids were not terribly interested in. But again, it's just another example of always swinging for the fences and always leaving it all on the table.
Well, I know we do have to wrap things up, but I do have one final question is with the show being called Steve Burns Alive that is coming up on July 23rd, 24th, and 25th here in New York City. What are you grateful for being alive today?
Oh, what a lovely question, Adam. And I'm going to keep it simple. As we were doing this interview, there were hummingbirds outside my window because it's a beautiful summer day. A little baby groundhog ran by, and we were even talking about groundhogs. Later, I get to work with my friend. I have an extraordinary amount to be alive about. I am a very, very lucky guy, but I take it one day at a time, and hummingbirds and groundhogs are plenty for me at this point in life.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your time today, Steve. And I want to remind everybody watching and listening, don't forget to see Steve Burns Alive. It will play at La Mama here in New York City's East Village for 3 performances only, July 23rd through July 25th. And I will have the ticket link on my entertainment platform at callmeadam.com. And Steve, thanks again for joining me today.
Adam, thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
He'll get the dirt and the scoop and the story, for he happens to be in the know. Just ask anybody who's Adam. Adam lives for the business of show. Call me Adam.com.